Hello, welcome and welcome back. Thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Esther and I'll be showing you the steps I took in making this fancy baby dress. To make this dress, I used Duchess satin fabric. I also used a cotton lining, tools. I used zebra can, that is hard knit, and I also used pearls. So pearls is what I use in embellishing the bodice of this dress. I started with cutting out the skirt. So here I have my fabric and I'm folding it lengthwise. After folding it lengthwise, I just fold it a little bit so it can accommodate in my sewing table. After folding it, I made sure to pin and secure it in place. Next is for me to go ahead and mark my skirt radius. The radius for an half circle skirt is the waist measurement plus zipper allowance divided by 3.14. So I always like to take out about half an inch from my radius, and that would serve as my seaming allowance. And then from that radius point, I'm marking my desired skirt length. No need to subtract anything. After hemming, of course, my desired skirt length will be less. With this, we are pretty much done, ready to cut out. So cut out the radius and also the skirts. So now that I've cut out my satin skirt, it's time to cut the lining skirt. The folding is pretty much the same because it's an half circle skirt. After I've folded and secured it in place, I am using the same radius that I used for the satin skirt. So what I did was just place the radius and pin it in place, and then proceed to mark my desired skirt length. So I'm going to take away 1.5 inch from my desired skirt length. So take away 1.5 from your previous cut skirt length. And from there, I'm just going to connect and cut it out. Please note that the lining is 1.5 inches shorter than the satin skirt. So right now I'm going to start working on my lining skirt piece. So I'm going to stitch the center back of this lining skirt piece, leaving an opening for my zipper extension. Then I will also go ahead and cut my can to a desired length. So I'm going to make sure that my can stop about 1 inch away from my hem. That's my skirt hem. Then I'm going to pleat and stitch this can on the skirt piece. The next thing I did was to cut my tulle. So right here I've stitched my can on my skirt, and you can make it as many layers as you want depending on the fullness you're going for. A layer was all I could get. So I've also stitched the center back of my skirt, leaving a zipper extension, and I've hemmed the down part of my skirt. So this is how I place my can and stitch. And after stitching, I just pull it down, that way the raw edge is concealed. Having done that, I'm going to just set it aside. So right here is the tulle that I cut out. So I want you to note the order. The cotton skirt is shorter than the satin skirt, while the satin skirt is shorter than the tulle. I haven't hemmed the satin skirt yet. I've not done anything to the satin skirt. So I'm going to start by gathering my tulle. So I'm going to gather it individually to have more volume. For my bodice, I will be using satin fabric, a cotton lining, and tulle for this bodice. Those are the fabric I'm using for my bodice. To draft the bodice, I always like to start with a straight line. So it's always good to have a start line that is straight. Then I'm going to go ahead and place a zipper allowance. So you can place a button allowance if you choose to have a button. Next for me is to fold over. The folded part will be my center front. Then I'll pin and secure that in place. Then I'm drawing a guide line which will also serve as the shoulder line. From that guide line, I will place my bodice length plus seam allowance. Since I'm drafting directly on the fabric, so I will include my seaming allowance. Having marked the bodice length, I'm going to mark my desired neck width, then have the shoulder width measurements of this child for seam allowance. I'll mark the shoulder slope and the armhole length. At the armhole level, I'll mark quarter of the round chest measurement plus ease and seam allowance. And at the down part, I'm supposed to mark quarter of the round waist measurement, ease and seam allowance, but I'll use the same as chest. With that, I'm going to connect all the marked points. I just like to go up a bit by the side of the bodice and just curve it out. I like the way it fits the child when I do this. Next is for me to mark my desired front neck depth, and I'll connect that. Then I'll go ahead and mark where I want the back neck depth to be. Feel free to use your desired neck depth and width. So I'm going to connect my armhole, so you can just go out by 1 inch and connect if you don't have a ruler. For the front, I'm going to find the midpoint and go in by about half an inch, and I will connect to form the front armhole. So with this, I'm going to cut out this bodice. Please, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do well to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified each time I upload a new video. Thank you. I'm going to use this satin bodice to cut my cotton bodice. So right here, I'm going to be cutting the two. I've cut my cotton lining using my satin lining exactly. So for the tulle, I made sure to double my tulle because some embellishments will be done on this tulle. So I'm not going to use a single layer. So I'm going to use a double layer of tulle. So I'm not cutting it exactly because some adjustments will be made before stitching. That's for the front. So I'm going to embellish the front of the bodice. But for the back bodice, no embellishment will be going on except a bow. So I'm going to cut exactly the way I want it to be. So I'm cutting exactly the way I'm going to be stitching. So right here, my bodice pieces are ready. I have the tulle, the satin, then the cotton lining, and I have same for the front. But for the front, the tulle, I will be embellishing it with pearls. There are lots of videos on how to fix pearls on garments or fabric. So that's why I didn't include that, because I didn't want this video to be extra lengthy. So check that out. So right here, I've embellished my tulle bodice with pearls. I still have quite a number of pearls left, but I think this is just enough. I want you to note that I did not use a single layer of tulle, so you do well to double your tulle. Or you can as well fix your pearls on the tulle and satin fabric. That can be done as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch the tulle on the satin fabric. I'm also going to place the tulle on my back bodice satin fabric, and I'm also going to go ahead and stitch it. So you want to stitch it so that it stays in place. So right here, I've done the stitch. So I'm going to place my back bodice on my front bodice, right side pressing. I'm going to go ahead and join them at the shoulder. I am using a zipper foot to stitch this. Yes, that is the tip. I'm using a zipper foot to stitch it. After joining my bodice at the shoulder, both for my fashion fabric and my lining piece, I'm picking up a piece of tulle here. The length can be as long as you want it or as short as you want it, but the width here is 4 inches, but when placed on fold is 2 inches. I'm going to go ahead and make some pleats, and while pleating, just make sure that it's enough for the armhole. So here is the pleats that I made. I'm just going to place it along this armhole, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch this in place for both sides of the armhole. After stitching it in place, this is what it looks like. So I'm just going to go ahead and place my bodice lining right side facing. So you can pin to secure this in place. I'm going to go ahead and stitch the neckline. After stitching the neckline, you can notch, but I'm going to trim down a bit on that neckline. So after trimming it, I'm going to push the remaining seaming allowance towards the lining, and I'm going to understitch that. Then I'll go ahead and stitch the armhole. So right here, I've already stitched and I've turned it right side out. So I'm going to join this bodice by the side. So I'm placing right side facing, lining to lining, fashion fabric to fashion fabric, and I'm stitching it by the side using my allocated seaming allowance. So right here, all our pieces are ready. The bodice side has been stitched. I am going to go ahead and assemble this by stitching the zipper on and making sure that the lining skirt goes to the lining of the bodice, and the tulle and the satin skirts are all stitched appropriately. You can refer to my other videos for that. After assembling all the pieces, our fancy ball dress is ready. I want to say a big thank you for watching to this point. It means a lot to me, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.